an opportunity for you to hear from the candidates as well. Lots going on. It is the season, and so we're going to bring up our individuals that are running for mayor of Lincoln City. We have all three of them in our studios this morning. I'm going to ask Dave to sit over there at that. Thank you very, very much. At that microphone. So we can kind of line you up. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in alphabetical order according to what is on the ballot. And so I don't know of any other way that is any easier. And there they just handed me a ballot, and so I will know kind of what's going on. This is from Lincoln City, and of course on Monday we had many, many individuals in that were running for wards, Ward 2 and 3, and we appreciate their efforts. They all, most of them, 99% came with their questions. It was a really interesting hour and a half in looking at kind of an in-depth opportunity for you. We do things differently here. This is not the same format that you are being presented in other market areas, so we hope that what we're doing is of benefit to you and digs a little bit deeper, and that's this morning what we're going to do. This morning we have questions that have been posed by those individuals who are running for the mayor of the city of Lincoln City, as well as I may have some questions too that I'm going to pose, and so we're going to do this all together, and it really is a privilege to have you all in our studios, and we thank you for the nice drive. Did you enjoy the drive, Susan?
Beautiful this morning.
It was kind of a nice for rest and relaxation. Someone that we know very well and to our microphones is Dick Anderson. And say good morning, Dick.
Good morning, Cheryl. Thank you for having us.
Well, thank you for coming. This is a really busy time of year. How does your calendar look?
Busy.
Pretty busy. It sure does. Dick, let's take a moment, first of all, and just go back and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Glad to. And thank you, Cheryl, again. I think a short history. My wife and I, Sue, chose to relocate to Lincoln City in 2006. We had retired and figured this would be a great place to enjoy those retirement years and life at the coast. As you know, we've both become very engaged in the community and involved. I picked up that bad habit of local government and have continued with that. But Sue and I have been married 48 years. We have 2 adult children, 5 grandchildren. The oldest grandchild has started, she's a sophomore at Western Oregon University. And so, we've enjoy what we do and been real active and involved in the community.
So, Dick, here's your first question.
Okay.
What is the secret to 48 years of marriage?
As my wife would clearly share, her secret is getting me trained. And she says I'm almost trained after 48 years. But I think on a serious note, it's certainly the whole concept of relationships, understanding each other, communicating with each other, knowing that there can't be winners and losers, finding that middle ground. Mm-hmm. And to a great extent, that's how I've continued and run my life, and actually the political side of when you work with groups, and often divisive groups, finding that middle ground where we can agree and move ahead for the benefit of everyone.
One of the things that I want our audience to know is that you have a very varied, what I call political background, as well as of service to Lincoln City. So maybe you could just go over and share with our audience a little bit about, you've been here since 2006. What have you been involved in?
Yeah, it's one of the values is certainly that voter pamphlet. So I'd always encourage voters to inform themselves by looking at that voter pamphlet. But in short, I got, after years of playing golf and, getting tired of retirement life, got involved with the city in Lincoln City through their budget committee. I've always been fascinated where the money comes from and goes, and then moved on to planning commission, and then ran for a city council seat that had 2 years remaining on it. My thinking there was, if I didn't like that kind of aspects of political life, I could always not run after the term was up. I found I, enjoyed it and was good at it, and ran for mayor in 2010, and was fortunate enough to win. So I've served 4 years as mayor in Lincoln City, and then ran for county commissioner and then state senate. And during that time, I was also asked to come back and appointed to the city council, of which I'm still on as city councilor.
As you have lived in Lincoln City and you have been very much a part of whether you've been on, the city council or mayor or whatever, you're very much involved in what's going on in the city. In your opinion, what do you see as where Lincoln City is today? What are its greatest weaknesses and what are its greatest strengths, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think Lincoln City has always has been a nice place to live, a great natural setting, being on the coastline and all those amenities. It's a growing city. It's been attractive to the valley population as a place to visit, but also we've found as a place to retire with our growth in Lincoln City has been with the older generation. The problems with being a resort area tourist town is certainly you have to have infrastructure that is built to handle the largest volume of people. And in our case, we go from roughly 8,000 population to 30,000. So you have to have infrastructure that can take care of 30,000. So, and I guess the other issue is you've got a main street that's a state highway. Built over time and has restrictions with it that makes it hard for a community to, find that centric place, that city downtown. So, it's got its issues, but certainly we've found ways to, work around them. I think Lincoln City still enjoys and will continue to enjoy being a very popular place for Oregonians and regional people to visit and enjoy.
Our processes and our procedures for these interviews are the same for every community. And so just to go over them this morning, I have in front of me 3 sets of questions that have been presented to me by the candidates running for the Lincoln City mayor. And those questions then are at my choice of what I'd like to choose and not choose, as well as some of my own questions. And when I ask a question from somebody that is running, we will pose the question to the candidate, and then that individual writing the question will also have 2 minutes. So the candidate will have approximately 2 minutes, and then the individual writing the question will have 2 minutes to respond. So here we go. Here's your first question. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. With regards to the office of council member, what would you say are your strengths and weaknesses, and what would you say was your biggest accomplishment? And this is from David Dolly.
Certainly, I have to look at my whole time, 10 years with city government, which was started out, as I indicated, city council, mayor, and then back to a city councilor. I think, my biggest strength is certainly the relationship, the ability to foster positive relationships, not only with the council and councilors, but with outside agencies that impact the life of citizens in Lincoln City. For example, the hospital, ODOT for traffic, the school system, the tribe. And so I've been able to generate very positive and continued relationships with those entities that have paid dividends to Lincoln City. The things that I think of best was the focus that previous councils have been able to concentrate on rather than, 7 people shotgunning ideas. We were able to focus on annexation and to get that accomplished, which had been an issue that had been on the table for 30 years and never dealt with, on the issue of sewering the lake. The lake is such a huge part of the community and is dirty, unhealthy, and needs to be sewered to thus protect that lake, and so advance that issue. And then the simple thing of water that was leaking out of the infrastructure. Roughly 40% of the water that was treated from the plant was lost before it even met its end place, i.e. in the residence or commercial. So a lot of things have been done, and real proud of how we've advanced, Lincoln City.
All right, so let's go over to the other candidate who wrote this question for Dick Anderson, and that is David Dolly. David, what regards to the office of council member, you asked Dick, would you say that are his greatest strengths and weaknesses? Any comments about what Dick said?
Well, I got to compliment Dick. He has volunteered a ton, and I don't think our community says thank you enough to he and Susan enough. I tried made every one of these mayor forums to acknowledge Dick and Susan's contributions, and it's so great that we have a strong network of leaders that care about Lincoln City, and also Dick hits a long and straight golf ball, which he didn't mention. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that this is a great opportunity if people care about Lincoln City, and they have definitely done a lot over the years for our city.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Here's my question. I want you to describe to me, it appears to me that Lincoln City has a lot of money to spend in the city, and that there is a lot of money that is being spent. There's a lot going on. There's a lot being built and construction, and of course you're responsible for infrastructure. How do you feel that money is being spent? And, are there concerns that you have? Are we staying within budgets, or are we overriding projects? Tell us about, in your opinion, what is going on financially.
Sure. And that is definitely one of my strengths, Cheryl. And I would acknowledge that Lincoln City is very fortunate with its revenue stream, primarily because of being a tourist community. Lincoln City has the most rental units on the coast between San Francisco and Seattle. So because of that, we're able to enjoy transit room tax revenue, and that's our second largest revenue stream behind property taxes. Not all communities have that, so it's a great opportunity.
How do you feel about the money being spent? Is it being spent appropriately, in your opinion?
Sure. We like all communities, have a budget process. And of which a budget committee that includes the elected as well as appointed citizens to monitor the budget, to approve the budget. I think there are areas that I'm critical of now, but again, I'm one voice trying to get others to agree and understand what's really going on, and that's the area of we've been enjoying strong economic growth in the last few years. We aren't and haven't been rebuilding our reserves. The recession, for me, wasn't that long ago. 2008, 2000, who knows when it really came back, recovered. But we, during those times, and I was mayor then, we used those reserves to supplement our revenue streams that had dropped. Mm-hmm. Property taxes had dropped, transit room tax had dropped, but we had reserves built that we could supplement, thus not adversely affecting citizens and services. So the criticism I would have is that in our good times now, we haven't rebuilt those reserves, and that's what I would be lobbying for with budget committees and stuff, to make sure that happens before we start spending on other things, capital improvements and stuff. But to answer your question, citizens of Lincoln City are very fortunate with how the finances have been handled. We enjoy great revenue streams. We've been able to add projects and attractions.
Are you staying on budget?
Oh, very much, yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that you've got to understand is cities have to do a balanced budget. So it's not a choice of, and that's why you need reserves, because things happen, i.e. sewer pipes break, emergencies. You got to have funds available to fix that, or you take them away from other projected projects into the future. But it's a very disciplined, we've forced a very disciplined forecasting model, understand what's coming up, what you need money for, and it's what I call basics. We've got to take care of those basics, then we can move funds into quality of life issues.
This morning we're talking to the three candidates from Lincoln City that are running for mayor. We have in our studios Dick Anderson, Dave Dolly, and Susan Walke, and right now we're talking to the first candidate, Dick Anderson, in alphabetical order. Since I posed that question, I'd like to ask either Dave Dolly or Susan if you'd like to comment about what Dick had to say. Go ahead, Dave.
I think that our finances are very high compared to our neighboring towns. And there are strategies that other cities are using to keep their civic costs down. And we also have $1 million in our reserve account for our water budget, yet we still increased rates on our citizens 9% every year. And so I think we need to look at, we have a lot of folks on fixed income who are just trying to get by. And it's a delicate balance. I'm not saying these are easy questions to answer, but we really need to look at that balance between saving for a rainy day, but also being super aware of the very delicate situation many of our citizens in Lincoln City are on our costs that are rising. And our property tax bill is going to go up in November as well, and there's another pressure on our delicate communities' family budgets.
Susan, comments about what Dick had to say?
Yes, I agree with most of what Dick said. We do need to focus again on long-range planning. We've had very good history of long-range planning in the city, and we need to continue that. One of the things that people don't understand is how restricted some of our funds are. We have a lot of money, but we have very specific things that much of that money can be spent on. So the budget process is a very complicated one, and we probably will have budget committee openings in this next year, and I hope people will get involved if they have questions about the budget.
Very good. Dick.
Sure. Could I come back with that? Because I think David brought up an excellent point on the concerns for citizens. And as many listeners may know, Lincoln City's median income is the lowest in the county, $30,000 median income versus Newport, for example, at $47,000. So I think all the electeds in Lincoln City are very much aware of the impact on citizens and taxes. I would point out, though, that property taxes, and that's a concern, continue to rise. But where the question for me and to the reader or the listener is, property taxes rise because voters, and unfortunately very few of them, keep approving levies. We just had in May 2 levies on the ballot in Lincoln County. One of them passed. In Lincoln City, had both of them passed, that would have been a significant, even with one passing, it's a significant increase in property taxes. That has nothing to do with the city of Lincoln City raising property taxes. So I would go back to his point of water and sewer rates going up 4%, 50 cents a month, is pretty small in comparison to levies that, quite frankly, a disappointing small percentage of voters even vote for, let alone approve. So it's your fellow neighbor who's taxing you. It is not the local government.
All right. Here is your next question, Dick. It is from Susan Walke. What advantage do you see urban renewal districts bring to a city? But first of all, will you tell us what an urban renewal district is? Sure.
An urban renewal district in Lincoln City, we had one of the first ones in Oregon, quite frankly, and what it does is provides an opportunity for a community to generate additional funding for specific projects to enhance an area. So you in essence throw a blanket over a designated area, and you come up with a plan of what you're trying to do for that area. Generally, you hear about getting rid of blight and improving, because the objective is to increase the tax base in that area. I think, to confess, Lincoln City probably was overzealous when they created the first urban renewal, because it was the entire, just about part of the city along 101, all the commercial areas, and it was pretty large, 25, 30-year plan. But what it does is generate revenue. It takes away, redirects tax revenue, because it doesn't add to the tax base. It redirects that already generated to this urban renewal district, which you can use to buy property, tear down, put infrastructure in, sewer, water, streets, things that will enhance. So developers will come, owners will come, and build properties which are then assessed.
Susan, comments about what Dick said?
Yes, I am very hopeful about our current urban renewal district sunsetting and the opportunities that gives us for a new urban renewal district.
Okay. Here's the next question, is posed by me. Dick, should a city council member or a mayor own a vacation rental and be on the city council or be mayor? Is there a conflict or not a conflict?
What?
In your opinion?
Sure. I don't know why you picked vacation rentals, because you could add that. Why should an elected own a business or, be employed? Because I think your question is generating, is there a conflict, or do conflicts arise? And the answer is yes. It always does and will, especially in a rural community, especially where we're all volunteers. And I'm not at all interested in paying us elected residents for these jobs, so I'd just as soon as stay volunteer. But there will always be a conflict, possibly. The important thing is that individual needs to know when there's a conflict and declare it as a possible or an actual, conflict. And we've got rules and guidance and state laws for that. So as far as your real question about owning, one thing over another, that to me is immaterial. It's declaring when you might benefit from some of your elected position personally.
I wanted to ask that question, and audience, I want you to be aware of that the current mayor of the city of Lincoln City does own a vacation rental. That has certainly been, in my opinion, an issue in looking at, the growth and development of projects and kind of direction on maintaining vacation rentals. Was there a conflict? I mean, there was a lot going on with Apichello, your city attorney. There was a lot going on. I'm just going to address this. And in your opinion, are people tired of that, with Don Williams going back and forth and looking at the issues that affect vacation rentals, or did the process was always positive and effective, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, certainly I think part of the problem was, and is always, for candidates to be a single purpose, single agenda type candidate. The only reason they're trying to get elected is to advance one specific area. That's the problem. I would disagree that it was an issue with Mayor Williams, simply because well known what his business is there. He's also a Subway sandwich guy. So you could add to that, anytime we talked about businesses, that could be a conflict. The important thing is to declare, and you recuse yourself from that discussion. And Don did. I mean, if he didn't think of it at the time, certainly between the attorney and other counselors, was pointed out that this may not be a discussion you should be in, because you you have a bias or a personal benefit.
Dave Dolly, comments about the question I just posed. Anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, the cost went into the hundreds of thousands of dollars to seek out that conflict, and all the while the issues of our city were put in the back seat while this conflict was being brought before our community. And I hope that we can learn as this council and these people around the table going forward that we can focus on the issues for the betterment of Lincoln City and not turn on one another, because the people lose in the end.
Mm-hmm. Susan, comment?
There are many rules in regulating conflicts of interest. In a small community, there are always going to be some issues that create some conflicts. My son-in-law works for a concrete company, so every time that company is a bidder on a public works project, I have to recuse myself. It's just part of living in a small community.
Cheryl,
and we just need to remember to follow those laws. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dick.
Cheryl, I would say the issue really wasn't around a VRD and Don, the mayor's involvement in that. As Susan just indicated, it was about declaring that you had a potential conflict, or I think particularly it was also around an executive session and the sharing of information from executive session outside public, which is against the rules. So I think the point I would pull away from that, and a good question maybe for later, is how about inexperience? You know, here was a mayor who was elected, very little experience and knowledge, and there's a learning pattern. You know, as Susan has indicated, some of the stuff is complicated as what the rules are, and one has to tread lightly. It's okay, in my opinion, to make a mistake as long as you learn from it, so you don't compound with more and more mistakes. And I think that's what got sideways early in Don's term as mayor.
As mayor. We're having such a strong, good discussion this morning. I want you to know that, I'm trying my best to give equal time. So here is your next question, Dick, and it is from David Dolly. With regard to transparency and open government, during executive session, you voted with no citizen input to acquire the villages of Cascade Head, a 2,000 building lot development, and just recently to enact a signed ordinance with no citizen input. Why? Is that clear?
Yeah. I would say let's get some facts straight. The first part about executive session, there were no decisions made in executive session. So as I recall, when I was mayor, that city council voted to approve make an offer, because it was an auction, on a piece of property of 360-some acres that was up for auction by the federal government because they foreclosed on a bank, took over a bank, and it was an asset, and it was property in Lincoln City. And it was platted for roughly 1,900 units for some 20 years. And so the city chose to make a bid on that, and that was very public. And the same thing on the other of a sign ordinance. I think, again, that was a very public process with hearings, and like all our documents, they're accessible to the public through the website. At the same time, the electeds get those ordinances. So I'm a little confused as to the concern that something was done behind closed doors. And, again, as I recall, the sign ordinance was stretched out over, 30 days, if not longer. So plenty of opportunity to weigh in on discussion.
David Dolly, that was a question posted by you. Comments about what Dick said?
Yeah, I think that there are needing to be modernization of our public meeting laws because they don't take into account an email or a text message. And these are becoming such integral parts of how we communicate in public policy and make decisions for the community. And I think even at the League of Oregon City should tackle these modern ways of communicating so that decisions that are made by our civic bodies can be more inclusive of those who we are governing. And that's what I'd say about this topic.
All right. Very good. Your last question, sir.
Okay.
It is, excuse me, from David Dolly, and it is, what are the best qualities of your opponents?
I would say they're both very genuine people. Somebody I would hope wouldn't raise their hand to run for a public office unless they cared. We can all question all of our motives, but I think all three of us, and especially these two of my opponents, are genuine in why they're willing to, as I would say, take the brunt of the public and serve. I don't know David as well as I do Susan, but Susan certainly has spent time in the government process on city council, has learned the processes, and has demonstrated beyond her government role of a caring community. David is still certainly attempting and has been very visible, which is a real positive asset.
All right, very good. I want to move on, and we're going to ask you at the end to come back and tell us why you'd like to be reelected, so I will give you that chance, but I want to wait. Dick, anything else that you'd like to say about the time that we've spent in this interview this morning?
No, I'll reserve my time to come back and rebut.
All right. Very good. Next, we're going to go to Dave Dolly, and here is your first question, and it is proposed from Dick Anderson. City budgets seem to increase every year, and we've talked about money already when opening this program, and potentially driving existing citizens, seniors particularly, out of their homes because of taxes. Do you have a solution?
Yeah, in looking to our neighboring cities, they are looking at being aggressive in ways that they can reduce their cost of their overhead. For example, Newport took their city employees off of PERS and went with a different retirement account and saved them $250,000 compared to what we're paying in Lincoln City. They also have the delicate balance of having contracted services as a city and having city employees. And we spend about $1 million on our dispatch services in Lincoln City, yet the county spends about $500,000 and the city of Newport spends about $500,000. So they're able to save $500,000 on their dispatch services for emergency services, contracting with a company out of Salem that dispatches for many communities throughout the community. And so I'm not saying these are end-all solutions. Coming into this opportunity as a mayor, it takes an entire council to look at what other communities are doing. These are merely observations I have, but I think there's more research to be done on what other communities are doing to keep their costs down as a city.
All right. Comments, Dick, about what he said?
Yeah, and those are great examples, things to look into. Mr. Dolly hasn't been involved with the city budget or any municipal budget that I'm aware of, and it takes a while to understand, as Susan had talked about a little while ago, restricted funds, what you can do, what you can't do. We deal with unions, so union negotiation. So I'd just say love the ideas, love getting things on the table, but be open-minded as to what restrictions are and aren't.
All right, very good. Dave, this is your next question. It is from Susan Walkie. Tell us about your leadership style and your experience leading groups.
Yeah, I have come into organizations that were struggling. I took over the Association of Mortgage Brokers, a large real estate trade association of all the mortgage companies. And as Dick would know, working in Fannie Mae in the early 2000s, and the mortgage industry was just bursting at its seams, but also was going through a lot of change. And so there was a mortgage bubble that happened towards between 2001 and 2007. But I took over that organization that was really delicately positioned financially, and I left it 3 years later with through private-public partnerships with hundreds of thousands of dollars in their bank account. And I solved a problem because we created continuing education for loan officers, and we partnered with an event company, and we were able to realize the share of those profits by modernizing our industry, all the while protecting consumers by passing laws at state that made people in our industry not be able to participate if they had a background in financial fraud. Here in Oregon, before that, anyone could originate a loan. And so we not only made our community safer as a state, I let that organization really soundly financially better than what I took on. And then I had asked the leadership for the next 5 years, and I went around the table, and I had leadership carry forward that organization for 5 years after I left.
All right, very good. That was a long time. Anything, Dick, that you want to say? I let that go a little longer. So.
Sorry.
That was Susan's question. She may.
I'm sorry. It was.
Yes.
Susan, thank you. Comments. I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's okay. I think that the voters need to look at the kind of leadership and the kind of organizations that the candidates have presided over.
All right. Here is my question for you, Dave. In looking at Lincoln City and looking at the last years of a mayor that has been quite controversial, do you think it has affected the ability for those individuals that are leading and directing Lincoln City, that it has affected them personally at all, or for their ability to function?
Well, Mayor Williams had to have a medical procedure, so I don't think that it was a non-stressful experience to have that acrimony. And I did have to think about, as a mayor, stepping into what acrimony we've seen as a civic leadership group. Why would I want to follow a history of large trials on our council? But I think back to how our city became a city in '64, when we were pressed with a major issue to overcome. And we had some strong families step forward during that time, and our city benefited. And that's kind of why I'm running now, is to rekindle this community spirit that I know is in Lincoln City, and to make it the visible point of camaraderie, of focusing on solutions and working together. I see it as an opportunity to build relationships. All of us know in relationships, they're built during the tough times, not always during the good. And I aim to leave Lincoln City with a stronger community bond than we've ever had, overcoming these challenges we've had the last couple of years.
So, Susan, comments about what Dave just said. Anything you'd like to?
I don't have any comments. Thank you.
Yep.
Cheryl, if I could, I think, unfortunately, society of the last few years have found their voice in a more rude, unpersonal approach, and from a national perspective to a state perspective, and it reaches down to a city perspective. As mayor, I was often and continue to be confronted by individuals who would disagree with a position or a vote or anything that the council was doing. And they would be in my face, very violently aggressive, to to where I would ask them, finally stepping back, they ought to run for office. They ought to sit in my chair for a while. And I've had people say, "Are you kidding? I couldn't take this crap that I'm giving to you." And that speaks of, unfortunately, people not remembering that there's a human being on the other side of the discussion. And I don't know why we as a society, have to go this route, but it's more than just a tough skin to be an elected official. You've got to be able to understand that, you're always on the job, and that if you can get 50% of the people to agree with you, you're doing well. So there's always going to be half the people that are disappointed or disgusted with whatever.
As individuals have been watching us around the table, they've been watching me around the table. I'm strolling through my emails because I was looking for a group of questions that were posed from someone from the city of Lincoln City to all of you. I'm going to pose those within our interview right now, and then at the end of this, I will tell you who posed these questions. David, they want me to ask you, he should be asked if he has any conflicts of interest regarding VRDs, for instance. Does he own a VRD? We talked about the VRDs. Is he part owner of any VRD, or do you have any close friends or any relatives own in full part of a VRD?
I own no VRDs. I do have friends having grown up here. In the 70s, these homes have served to create family memories for a lot of families here in Lincoln City, but I do not own any VRDs. I put that out there on social media, although there are people to this day saying that I do. And I also would hope that our counselor, or our all of us running for office, could talk to those who are supporting us and put the right information out there and keep this campaign positive. I've gone to West Devils Lake Road and asked a homeowner to remove a negative sign.
Right.
Because it's just not how we operate. That's not how Dick and Susan operate. And I would hope the people out there would put the right information out there about us.
All right, here's your next question from this individual. Is Dave familiar with the city's 30-year plan? What are his thoughts on how it addresses the needs for affordable and workforce housing? How does he think the plan can be improved?
I was in council a week ago reading the formatory paragraph to that plan. And in 1998 versus where we are today, things are way, way different. I spent last week in Salem at our state's housing department offices looking at projects around the state where current funds and nonprofits are putting affordable housing in. And Lincoln City doesn't have a lot of that. We just had one groundbreaking, but we need a lot more. And so as it pertains to that comprehensive plan, I think we need to update it and put a 2018 filter on getting us to where we can see homes under construction, seniors and young families moving into homes sooner than later.
So you all will know, and I had to kind of string this out so I could find this person's name. I'm not very computer literate, but here's who posed. My name is Jamie Jerry, Geri, and he says that he or she, I'm not sure, says, I received the questions from a group of fellow community members, and we've met before. My last name has changed, but you interviewed Claire Hall and I several times on the radio. So that is who's proposing and posing these questions that I'm asking you. Dick, there are some things here for you, but we'll come back to that. The last question, after your work, Dave, in promoting nonprofits these last few years, what have you learned about the challenges the community faces?
I think that there is... they did a survey on the largest users of marijuana by industry, attorneys, doctors, lawyers. You want to know the number one user of marijuana, cannabis? It's service workers and cooks. There's a reason. In your opinion, or is that... No, the Oregonian published this study. And so we have, that's indicative of the pressure our service workers are under. Why do we have 7 dispensaries in the form of 7 miles? is we have our most vulnerable workforce under extreme pressure of having enough hours, enough money to make the rent. We have people living in cars last night, and we're about to hit 40 degrees. So this is the state of affairs of our town, that we need to talk more about solutions in our city council meeting about how we can get this most vulnerable audience more support right here, right now, during these dire times of our service workers.
All right. Susan Walkie has another question for you, Dave. And the question is, do you think we should build a new police station?
That's kind of already down the road. We have renderings happening. We have a bond going out. I am concerned we had over $30 million in infrastructure for our sewer needed. And here we're building a police facility. But this community is stepping forward, as well as arming our fire departments with structures, with modern equipment. We are overdue for a major earth potential episode. So by bolstering our police station to have it be modernized as far as the structure and rigidity, that it could be a command center, I think it's a smart thing. And I think our community is backing our police more than ever. I went on a ride-along myself. These men and women dedicate a ton of their time away from their families, being on for 3 days. We've got wives and husbands who are single dads during this time. I can't tell them thank you enough for the sacrifices our first responders make for our town. So I support it. And again, it's beyond saying a different direction. Our council has spoken, and I support the decisions our council has made.
Comment, Susan, about what he said?
There are many reasons that the police station needs to be rebuilt, and I think people need to remember that we plan and are able to pay for the expenses of the new police station with transient room tax dollars. There'll be no raise in taxes.
Comments, Dick?
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing, is because our earlier talking about the impact of taxes on our citizens. Both the police station is not hitting the tax rolls to adversely affect our local citizens. It's being paid for through transit room tax, so our tourists are paying for it. The other thing that's a big addition to North County is the hospital. $42 million hospital, and the North County and Lincoln City will certainly enjoy that and benefits. It's also not hitting the tax rolls, unlike Newport's hospital, where the taxpayers are suffering the burden of that expense. North County, it's not being paid for. The health district, negotiated a deal where the hospital gets built without adversely affecting the citizens. So I think the leadership, electeds in North County and Lincoln City, have very much cognizant of the impact of taxes and things that affect their citizens.
Of course, Lincoln City, we're talking to the three mayors this morning as we head down to finishing our interviews, but we're going to be talking specifically to the third candidate, Susan Walkie. So let's get back around the table and let's get started. And we were finishing up with David Dolly. And David, I just want to make sure that we've asked you plenty of questions. One of the things that as I look over this that I might ask you in your opinion as we wrap this up, and this question is from Dick Anderson. How would you improve traffic in Lincoln City?
I have a short-term and long-term plan. And first of all, I would ask Dick Anderson, because I want to thank him. He has represented us, burned a lot of gas driving over to the valley and keeping us on the radar of this large organization, statewide Oregon Department of Transportation, and these funds are being pulled everywhere. So I just first want to say thanks to Dick. I don't think he's told it enough for us, keeping us on the radar. But I think it's time to get our neighbors out in the off season and talk about how we, as the clusters of business mix up between Taft, Nell Scott, and get our business together and say, what can we do this fall to get ready for the summer 19? Whether we talk about, I know the light in Nell Scott has not been timed correctly. The neighbors there say it sits almost 10 to 15 minutes sometimes before letting you onto 101. I think there's modernizing that light, that you apply a different timing on a weekend versus during the week. So I would like to get our businesses and neighbors in meetings in the different parts of our city and let them talk about issues we can implement right away. Maybe some temporary speed bumps on our side vein streets, because our side streets, a lot of them don't have sidewalks. They are our sidewalks. You've got kids, you've got people with dogs walking to the beach, and they turned into thoroughfares off of 101, and people were speeding. So maybe we announce right when you get off 101, if you're speeding, you're going to get a ticket. So I think there's some common sense, good communication items we can do in the short term, and then in the long term, these funds don't come every single year, but it's been a number of years since we've done Nell Scott. We're probably up for another round of infrastructure to 101 in our area. So I would update the community on what potentially is coming and how many years away could it be. And do we need to be writing letters to ODOT so that we get on their radar that we want these funds here?
So that is comments by David Dolly. Dick Anderson, comments?
No, I agree with David. I think it's always a good conversation with business owners, especially since 101 is lined by commercial districts. They're certainly easily adversely affected by traffic, as is the residents. So community conversations is good. Again, easily solved with money. That's the problem. Trying to pull federal dollars as well as state dollars into our community is the challenge.
All right, very good. Well, anything else that you'd like to say, David, as we move on to Susan Walkie?
Is this our final comment period, or we'll all have our?
You're all going to have final comments.
Let's keep moving along. You're a gracious radio host. I want to thank you for having us here today.
Well, thank you very much. You don't see often what I just did, and that is to bring in, and thank you for allowing me some time to say thank you to Oregon Coast Bank and to feature some new appointments in that bank that I thought were worthy for Lincoln County and the Central Oregon Coast to know. So let's go over to Susan Walkie. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning, Cheryl.
Susan, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, first of all.
I came to Lincoln County 26 and a half years ago. I was employed by the city of Lincoln City for 3 years, so I have a unique perspective on city government. I've been behind the scenes, working for 2 years for the city attorney and for about a year at the police department. I have spent 30 years as a legal secretary. Part of that time I worked in a county planning department in Clatsop County, so I understand planning procedures that are always evolving, so you have to stay up on those rules, but and they're different for every county and every city, but I do understand statewide planning goals.
All right. So here is your first question. It is from David Dolly. In February 2018, you signed a $6,000 settlement agreement to avoid a trial over your holding over 60 illegal meetings. And this has been an issue that I know that Rick Beasley, has talked about. Why should, in the newspaper and written about, remember Rick Beasley does a lot of writing on the reports and reporting for Lincoln City, particularly the council, as well as other areas of interest. So this question again, in February 2018, you signed a $6,000 settlement agreement to avoid a trial over your holding over 60 illegal meetings. Why should the taxpayers pay the settlement fee, as they were the result of you and the other city councils breaking our public meetings laws? And were the laws broken?
I don't feel that the laws were broken. We signed and this is not a personal thing. This was the city council. Mm-hmm. We signed that in order to put the issue behind us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I think it was a reasonable settlement. that probably nobody was happy about, and that's compromise.
All right. So, Dick, this is I think, a really important question. So, I want to allow you to respond to that question, if you'd like. Would you like me to read the question again?
On the settlement.
On the settlement. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think as I said in my earlier comments, the answer to often our electeds' role is to find middle ground. The alternative in this situation was going to court, paying for attorneys, paying for courts, and it was clearly projected to be a huge expense. To prove ourselves, unconvicted or wrong, not wrong, and we chose a settlement route. I don't actually recall it being $6,000. I thought it was $3,000. But regardless, it was better saved for the citizens of Lincoln City rather than going to court. There was no admittance of wrong. It was get it out of the way.
All right. David Dolly, comments.
Well, it was serious enough for a judge in Newport to give a court date. So if it was just a casual, something unclear. So the fact that a judge actually said there was merit in the case, I think that's what people can also put in their own terms. It was $6,000. $3,000 was donated to the Lincoln City Resource Center, and $3,000 was donated to the Lincoln County, I think it's a scholarship fund for Lincoln County law students. So I think also what is the lesson to learn from this experience is I have worked in other communities where our city staff, who are paid staff, who know these rules, are the ones we need to really lean on for the future, because these two volunteers sitting on my side should be protected by our city staff knowing these rules, so we never ever have to get to a point of an ethics investigation or to these issues with meeting laws. I really want to step forward in the new year of looking at our laws so that we in Lincoln City are not known for having to do settlements or court dates. I know where Dick and Susan's heart is to work for the best, but I hope that we don't have this going forward, that we can learn from these edges of how we've been around getting things done, but I really hope we don't have this in the future, and I think it's in partnership with our city staff knowing the rules.
All right. I'm going to cut in and go on. Now, this is Susan's turn and time to talk to us. That was Dave Dolly that was just speaking. Susan, here's a question from Dick Anderson for you. What is your agenda and your priorities as mayor of Lincoln City if you were elected?
I don't have an agenda. I bring my experience, my relationships to the job. I think that when a mayor thinks they can come in to city council and do everything the way they want to do it, they are misinformed. The mayor is only one of 7 voices on the council, and as our city manager likes to say, the most important part of being city council or mayor is being able to add to 4, to count to 4. So if you have 4 votes, then things will happen. If you don't have that support, then you need to either build that support or move on to another issue.
Comments, Dick?
I agree wholeheartedly with Susan, and I think we've got good examples of history where people get elected for whatever position for single purpose, single agenda, and they don't enjoy their time. They may not even get their single purpose accomplished because they haven't done a very good job of forming relationships, explaining the rationale for their agenda, and it's just not healthy for the community.
Right. Here's the question I pose. I have some concerns about the Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce and the Lincoln City Cultural Center in relationship to the city and the support for each of those organizations. I know recently that the committee that Ed Drystad represents, and of course that is the marketing and things that are going on there, that the Cultural Center was chosen over the Chamber of Commerce to really kind of represent them. And I'm just wondering if there is a conflict or what you think we can do to better serve and to make sure that we're taking care of both, because the Cultural Center is much different than the Chamber of Commerce. But I think sometimes, in my opinion, that that maybe one of those organizations may feel that they get less attention or less support. Is that something that Susan, you can relate to at all? Or
well, I do understand the relationships between the city and the chamber and the city and the cultural center, and they're very different. I think what you were referring to is the marketing dollars that are distributed from transit room tax dollars, and that is a fund that must be spent that way due to our charter. We have appointed a committee of citizens, the Visitor and Convention Committee, to make the decisions about how those funds are distributed. The committee is made up of representatives from different industries. That's all very prescribed in our charter. It's a recommendation to the city manager, and in the past the city manager has changed those recommendations and did not like the results of the feedback he got from that. So this year, even though he did not agree with many of the recommendations, he went along with them. It was a long process between the time that the applications were presented to the committee and the time that the city manager finally made his decision. That created some issues for some people, and I think we need to look at the way these grants are given. Possibly make some changes in the future.
All right. Dave, any comments?
Yeah, I think that if we were to look at the foot traffic into the cultural center versus the foot traffic where our Chamber of Commerce is, it's kind of at the first main light in Lincoln City, I would like to see the numbers of foot traffic, because I think that should also be looked at as far as what's the data of new people walking in and asking for information and guidance to our city. And the cultural center in the middle of our town, sometimes I think people drive by and don't know that there's a massive information in there, because it's also the reader boards advertising art events. And so I think there's a challenge there to reach the people as much as we would like. But I agree with Susan that we have committees who are volunteer committees. They take a lot of their time, and I appreciate committees, and they feel good when they're backed by city leadership. So I would have to appreciate that committee looked at the data.
All right, Dick?
Yeah, I would again like to just add to the information. This was actually an RFP, a request for participation that the Explorer Lincoln City put out to the Cultural Center, or for all bidders, but the Cultural Center and the Chamber to run the Visitor Center. So it was a request for a proposal. Both entities gave their data and gave what they could do, and so then a decision was made about which one could best advance the city's visitor center. And the reason you do that is because it was over $25,000 in revenue that the entity would receive, $30,000 as I recall. So I didn't see projects or the proposals, but I know it was a very public process to that extent. And, it's the way it should be done. It's like you would for a bid for a repairing of, pipes or building buildings or anything else.
Are you concerned for those organizations at all of how they're used within Lincoln City and justified for?
Well, I'm not. Now, quite frankly, it's very different than Newport. So perhaps your perspective is coming from how things are done in Newport. That's not how they're done in Lincoln City. There's, we have, as we said earlier, a lot of money that comes in through transit room tax, market the city. And at one time, it was the chamber who, did a lot of it. That was then we formed the Explore Lincoln City entity. Both Cultural Center and the Chamber, have attributes, are very complementary to the city, and they get a chance to, give their reasons for doing business with them.
All right. Susan, here's your next question. It is from the citizen from Lincoln City that emailed me. He wants me to ask you, what are your immediate solutions for housing in Lincoln City? And you've said that you'd like to spend more on the police department. What would those funds be used for?
I don't know that I've stated I wanted to spend more on the police department. I like the way the plan is going right now, and we will see if there are additional funds that need to be spent there. One of the things I've done for the housing market is for available housing is I purchased a house in April, so the rental that I was living in for many years is now back on the rental market. We are doing many things as a city to improve housing in Lincoln City. It's just a very, very slow process. And I, for one, am frustrated by that slow process. But I guess as it moves forward, we'll see the results. We have city-owned property that is out for expressions of interest from developers, and we will be working with those developers to provide the kind of housing that Lincoln City needs.
All right. Any comments real quickly on what Susan just said, gentlemen?
Go ahead, Dick.
Well, I would say that the public is probably not aware of how much construction is actually going on in Lincoln City. We have broken records from new starts, new construction, and if listeners just go north to the Palisades area, just off Voyage, a developer up there has been going to second and third phases of raw land and have improved them and building houses, and that is directly related to earlier statement of urban renewal dollars, of putting in infrastructure, sewer and water, because that whole north end was absent that capabilities, and we put it in so it's a boom. Look at the apartments that have been built, around Bi-Mart, near the hospital under construction, over near the DMV. These are all apartments in the last couple of years that have come as a result of what Susan's indicated that the city has done to facilitate and position for housing. I would share her concern that we're not doing it fast enough.
All right. David.
I'm concerned because two projects have been done by employers for their employees. The new apartments over on West Devils Lake Road that rentals are organized by the dentist so that his staff can have housing. Why are our dentists our builders? The new development across from Galucci's, the rental house there, that's the owner of Maxwell's Restaurant for his employees. Where are our builders? The developer who did the apartment complex by Bi-Mart and out by DMV is no longer here. He has serious conflicts with our community, and we need to sit down with him and ask what it's going to take to get him back.
All right. Boy, this has been quite an hour and a half on the air, except for the time that you provided for Oregon Coast Bank. We've talked about a lot. Dick, I want to give you one question at least from the individual writing in, and here's your question from him, if you'd be willing, and then we're going to give you all a chance to tell us why you want to be reelected. So here's the question that this person poses to you. How do you intend to increase the profitability of your workforce for 2019 if elected mayor? What will you definitely do differently than you did last time, and have needs changed?
I'm not quite sure, the question. I guess wages, we could attack it there, and already wages have increased.
But have they increased enough? Because I see that Chamber of Commerce is talking about $11.25 an hour for for that area. Can you live on $11.25 an hour?
Well, Cheryl, there are numerous signs up and down 101 in Lincoln City for jobs.
Okay.
The businesses are looking for workers. Mm-hmm. When there's a shortage of workers, wages usually increase because of demand. You want workers in your place, so you pay more. We've seen it with Amazon and everybody else raising to $15 an hour. The state, and we included, because we're part of the state, have implemented, minimum wage increases that are moving along. So it's disingenuous to say that the wages haven't increased, because they have, and by supply and demand as well. Again, I'm not quite sure what the asker is looking for from a mayor or a city council, but I'm a firm believer that you've got to have a healthy community in order to be attractive to living wage jobs. Mm-hmm. And for me, being attractive means having housing and affordable housing for your workforces at all levels, having good school systems, having health care, and having transportation. So I think you need a council that's supportive of all those things and supportive of the business community to generate those kind of living wage opportunities.
Comments, Susan, about the workforce for Lincoln City? Anything you'd like to say?
I work closely with small businesses. My husband owns a small business. I'm very aware of the business climate in Lincoln City, and
should the minimum wage be $15?
That's not something that we can control. I think that people should be paid what they're worth.
And what does that mean, what they're worth?
What their skills...
But in relationship to a living wage, I mean, there's a difference of what they're worth and are they capable of living on. And I guess I'm concerned, and I'm just asking you in your opinion, is there a concern about what they're worth, or is there a concern about providing, a life that they can buy groceries and pay for heat and energy and, take care of themselves so that they don't end up on the streets as homeless?
The economy all over Oregon is precarious, I guess, and especially in our tourist town. I have had to work 4 jobs at one time in order to pay the bills.
Wow.
I know what that's like, and there aren't a lot of jobs in Lincoln City that can support a family with one wage earner.
Okay.
And we need to work on diversifying our economy.
So you have true experience about that, about making a living.
Yes,
Dave, comments about
the
workforce?
Rents in Lincoln City have doubled since 2007, yet wages for our most vulnerable have only gone up 15 to 20%. So when you double rents, yet the income to these most vulnerable seniors. At the Dorchester, we have a toilet paper program.
Right.
This means people are donating toilet paper because folks are going to eat or get toilet paper. And that's the state of the disparity you're talking about,
Right.
Cheryl, of it is extremely pressure-driven on our most vulnerable, and we need to talk about solutions in our council meetings. It's
Right.
so important that we come back here next year to this radio station and say, wow, we've got X amount more revenue by being creative, or a shop local campaign, or maybe there's an idea of a local rate, that gets people to our restaurants, but it's less than what tourists pay during the summer. We need to be talking about ideas. Every hour for our service workers is crucial.
All right. It has been a privilege to have the three of you in our studios. We went a little longer because we introduced and said congratulations to Oregon Coast Bank, to several employees that are being recognized this morning. But I want to start out, Dick, since you started this program, let's go backwards. And Susan Walkie, tell us, and then we'll go to Dave Dalby, and then we'll go to Dick Anderson, and each of you, if you'll tell us in 2 minutes why you'd like to be elected as mayor of the city of Lincoln City.
I have lived in North Lincoln County for 26 and a half years. I have been involved with Lincoln City government since that time. I've served on the Lincoln City Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, and also prior to my election as city councilor, I served on the Lincoln City Budget Committee. Since I was elected to represent Ward 1, I have served as the Budget Committee Chair, the Urban Renewal Chair, and I currently am serving as Council President. And I am now running for mayor, and I would be honored to represent all of Lincoln City.
All right. Very good. That was Susan Walkie that you heard from. And David Dolly, comments about why you'd like to be elected as the mayor for the city of Lincoln City.
Yeah, having grown up in our street, we had Oregon Coast Bank here today. The Lincoln City branch is 2 blocks where I rode my bike as a little guy. And I just love that there's a bank branch now in my neighborhood. And I am so excited to be a possibility to be mayor of our amazing town. And I have had many state leaders who've wanted to endorse me for this position based on my capacity to lead, my capacity to solve solutions for large bodies and organizations. And if you go down 101 and see my signs, that's reflective of the relationships that I've been able to create locally. And I really know, and I say this in every item, between Dick and Susan and myself, we care deeply about this community. And however the election turns up, the three of us are going to pick up wherever we're selected and continue to make this town better. And it's an honor to be in this campaign. And thanks for having me here today, Cheryl.
All right.
And to your staff person. He's an excellent person behind the scenes. He doesn't get as much credit, but he is
They're talking about
he's
you.
an excellent guy that makes Cheryl look good.
That's exactly right. He certainly does. Dick Anderson, comments of why you'd like to be elected mayor of the city of Lincoln City.
Cheryl, thank you. It's my belief that the city of Lincoln City citizens are screaming for leadership, that they've seen the last 4 years somewhat rudderless, to use the voting term. And, I have the experience. People have certainly know me, have seen me in that position in the past. They see and recall how I make decisions, the accessibility that I brought forth to this position of being available for anybody and everybody to talk to, and a willingness to share my thoughts about a decision or yet to be made decision. I'm a good listener, and I think that's crucial. People can say anything about what they would like to do or whatever, and as already stated, it takes 4 votes to get that to happen, and you've got to be able to foster relationships and partnerships that are meaningful.
All right. Very good. Well, it has been a privilege to have the three of you on, and for you to have believed in these radio stations and the time that the commitment that you've made to come here and to be on the air with us. We hope, listeners, that we've given you an opportunity to really look at these three individuals probably more deeply than you will at any other time in the appearances that they are making. Our processes and our format are much different. There is no one that is doing what we are doing. These are created by me, and obviously, as a host of this program, it is an opportunity for you to really see why an individual might want to run for an office, and that is what we are doing between now and election night, which will be November the 6th. To remind you, we will be on the air live. To all of you that are in this room, if you win this position, please come and either by telephone or by visiting us live in our studios to talk about your win and what we can look forward to. I want to say thank you to Don Williams, the current mayor, who has now served 4 years as the mayor. He is moving on to some other things, and to thank him for the term that he has served for Lincoln City. It's been a privilege to have him on several times. He's been on my radio programs. In fact, whenever I've ever asked him, he has come on and said, yes, I'll come. And so I'm in the process now of getting him on the air and want to give him a chance to talk about Thanks for the Memories over the last 4 years. And that's a program we'll do after election time is over. And that we have a new mayor for the city that will take effect January 1st. So to all of you listening, we want to remind you that this program can be downloaded in its entirety at bossradio.net in the next hour. And we say again, congratulations to the Oregon Coast Bank and to Jake Postlewaite and his new position, and to meeting the branch manager for the city of Lincoln City as well as the individual who's head of the real estate division. A pleasure and a privilege to feature Oregon Coast Bank this morning. On Friday, well, who do we have? Well, it's going to be interesting. We just spent last week talking about a recall for the mayor, Billy Joe Smith, and Terry Strom, as well as another individual that had been recalled. The recall is done and over, and now on Friday we are moving ahead, and we'll be talking to the city of Toledo running for a 2-year term mayor. Rod Cross will be in our studios, and Billy Joe Smith will also be in our studios. Remember to bring your questions, and that is the format that we will use. Also, on Friday morning, we will have individuals in our studio that are running for 3 positions at large. These are 4-year terms. You'll be voting for 3 of the 5 individuals that will be on your ballot. The ballots are coming in the mail now. In our studios on this Friday are Bill Dalby, Michelle Johnson, Heather Jukic, Terry Strom, and I am still working on Betty Kamikawa to see if she will hopefully come and be in our studios as well. So I have not had any commitment from her. But again, Bill Dalby, Michelle Johnson, Heather Jukic, and Terry Strom will all be in our studios, along with those running for mayor, Rod Cross and Billy Joe Smith. A privilege it has been. It's a great life in the Central Oregon coast. We always say good morning to America, good morning Oregon, and good morning to all of the visitors. We love our Canadians. They are here now visiting us as school has started, and thank you for joining us on this beautiful, beautiful weather we're having. We cannot say enough about our weather. It is a great morning, and like I always like to say this morning, I am your host, Cheryl Harrell, and as I always like to say, I'll see you on the radio. Have a great day.